Hello there, everyone. Today we're going to take a look at Rise and Shine. This one's been in the making for a little while, and it turns out this game is a little different than I thought. This game is actually very, very short. And it turns out what I'm actually going to show you is very, very early in the game's playthrough, because I don't want to go too late into the game and actually show you like a bunch of stuff near the end. So what I'm actually going to be showing you is actually quite early, which is a bit unusual, although I consider the breakdown technically first impressions as a series and not like a full-on review. I still have to, I still am showing oftentimes like a fair bit into the games that I tend to show, like at least halfway-ish or so. But in this case, not so much. Oh, God. Okay. So, what is Rise and Shine? Rise and Shine is a kind of, okay, this is going to be challenging, is a 2D kind of, I suppose you could say, platformer, mixed with some cover-based shooting, and, I have to do that, okay, and some other mechanics, including, as you can see here, some puzzles, and a couple of other things, including some almost Metroidvania-seeming mechanics. Oh, I thought I had it. But it's not really a Metroidvania-style game, it's just some mechanics that are reminiscent of that. Now, it's, as I mentioned, actually quite a short game. It can be beaten in about anywhere from 2 to 4 hours-ish, depending on how good you are at it. But, I would expect your first playthrough to be kind of on the longer-ish end of that, because it can actually be very difficult. The game is not easy, and dying and respawning is actually a feature of the game. You are Rise, this little boy, and the legendary warrior, the legendary hero of time, question mark, he's very much Link, by the way, dies right in front of you, and gives you the gun, this sentient revolver-esque gun here, called Shine. And it is, well, it can talk, it's got a giant eyeball on it, and it has all sorts of attachments and various functions. Okay, how do I beat this thing? Let's see. Do I just run past it? No. I don't remember. But, oh. Gotcha. But, the basic premise is that you're trying to stop the invasion of this world. And this world is heavily based in video games and video game tropes. So basically, you'll see all kinds of video game references in the characters, in the backgrounds, and all sorts of things. So of course, oh, jeez. Ah. Uh-huh. Gotcha. So, yeah, just like that example right there, the game likes to kind of mess around with game mechanics a bit, and kind of use some game and pop culture references, but as more than just, as more than just references, but as actual kind of messing around with mechanics and things like that to kind of mess with your expectations a bit. And the idea of dying and respawning is very much like part of what it's actually kind of normal in this world, depending on, characters even call it that. They talk about how this gun actually gives you infinite respawns and things like that. And so yeah, there's a fair amount, of, oh god, damn it, there's a fair amount of trial and error in the gameplay though, as you can see here. To the point where some people may actually call this game a little unfair. And honestly, in some cases, I wouldn't necessarily disagree with them. It's certainly very, very challenging. And some of that challenge comes from genuine, just skill-based stuff, and some of it does come from, I'm not even sure if I ever could have possibly seen that coming, and I almost had to die there at least once before I would have known what to do. Now, ooh, explosive bullets. Oh, and you can detonate them in midair. Interesting. I see. But you have a limited number of them. Alright. However, even having said all of this, what basically will happen if you are to kind of play through this game long enough, oh god, is you will find out that a great amount of the kind of average, I suppose, playthrough is going to be mostly you trying to find out how to not die too much. That's pretty much the idea. It's a bit weird at first. Damn. Because you have a health gauge, but it almost seems, I don't know, useless. It seems redundant because there are so many things that kill you instantaneously or very, very, very quickly. No. But yet you do have this health gauge, and there are some attacks, the smaller ones generally, which will actually, you know, allow you to survive a couple of hits. So it's, I don't know, it's a bit strange that the game is designed in this way, and sometimes the design of the game feels a little, I don't know, like it can't decide exactly what it wants to be. But overall, I do feel like it's a very well-designed game as a whole. It clearly wants to, well, it's set out to make itself quite beautiful. Obviously, the art style is incredibly good-looking. A million-year-old Colossus? Yeah. And, oh god, is this gonna be a boss fight? Should I be, like, jolting these things? Oh, God. And, the art style itself is probably my favorite part of the game. It's extremely good-looking. And it's also really, really, really laden with various references and things like that. But a lot of times, like I said, the references are either pretty well done, to where it's not just, like, video games, guys, right? But it's, like, fairly interestingly executed to where the references make some degree of sense, at least. Have a... get in there. Yeah. But, you also have the idea that there are tons of background things. Like, you're seeing in the background right now, there's a huge amount of detail in the actual backgrounds of the areas, and you've probably seen some stuff as I've been walking through the area that I probably missed because I've had to focus on not getting shot. And the areas, especially early in the game when you're going through the city area, are just filled with that. So they've clearly kind of deigned to make this very beautiful game. Ah, crap, I died. And they have most definitely succeeded in that. However, the actual game design is not exactly as sublime as the art style. You can die so very quickly and have to restart entire long sections that sometimes it can feel a bit anticlimactic. Like, the very first boss actually can take a while because it's like a 3-stage boss fight where even messing up just one time can get you instantly killed, and you have to restart from the very beginning. There are no checkpoints at all. Which means that essentially once you like, I guess how to put it properly. Once you figure it out, you get the idea of how you were supposed to do it. You're supposed to feel like you've done this whole thing in this kind of like hyper-skilled, all-in-one shot, I just very satisfyingly trounced that boss without getting hit kind of like idea. But because it often takes so many tries to do it, and there's such a small margin of error for a first boss, it can feel really tedious and quite difficult to actually get it right. And I just feel like the design of that first boss was kind of odd, I guess, and I don't know, the game's design feels at odds with itself sometimes. It's clearly meant to be like this hyper-stylish, very difficult, I'm just failing miserably at this, hyper-stylish, very difficult sort of platformer with shooting elements. But sometimes the actual shooting and platforming aren't necessarily friends with each other, we'll say. And the, like, very few, or we'll say far away, checkpoints and things like that can make it feel like you were doing really, really well and having a lot of fun, and then suddenly, something like that happens, you just make one bad jump and your health gauge doesn't matter at all. You die, like, instantly from something that you may not have even seen coming, and then you're sent back quite a long way and have to do a very long part over again. In this case, this isn't really a problem. In this particular, I guess you would kind of call it like a boss. Ow, damn. Because the checkpoints seem to be after every one of these pieces of this heart are being lit up, which isn't a problem. But a lot of times I've found that the checkpoints would be more like if I had to do all three of these pieces at once and there was no like margin for error. It seems like the checkpoints are actually getting more generous as I go through the game, which is a bit weird because earlier they weren't this generous at all. So it's strange. The difficulty of the game is kind of, I don't know, schizophrenic, I guess you could say, because sometimes it's just like monstrously difficult and you can get killed out of nowhere from something you didn't see coming at all, and it feels kind of unsatisfying to die that way in a game that otherwise feels very skill-based and yet has these leftover elements of like NES and Super NES era games that were just kind of out to kill you for no reason from something you couldn't possibly have seen coming. And yet, the rest of the game often feels more like, yeah, I definitely could have avoided that, that was my fault, I just died because I wasn't good enough. And the game is a weird mix of both of those two things, and sometimes it doesn't feel like it knows which one of those it wants to embrace more than the other. And that's really my only main problem with it. The game itself is a lot of fun, and when it's at its best, it's really, really good. Ow. No, I guess I should have jumped. But when it's kind of throwing these like instant death traps at you constantly and you're a little bit confused on what you should be doing, it can feel a bit frustrating sometimes. I still think overall the game design is quite good, and I'm definitely not trying to insult the game in any way. It's actually very well made. It's just that sometimes it's easy to get confused and feel like you're very unsure as to what you should have been doing at that point, and if that death was actually avoidable or not, and if you just weren't paying attention and missed something obvious, or if it was genuinely something that you wouldn't have possibly seen coming unless you knew in advance, like you were using a guide or something. Otherwise, the game is very sublime. It controls very, very well. And the art style is fantastic, as I've mentioned. The controls are interesting. A lot of people have mentioned you should really be using a controller for it, but I disagree. The mouse and keyboard is, like, phenomenal. It works very well. I haven't had a problem with it at all. Oops. Because, of course, mouse aiming... man, what is causing those explosions? I'm not quite realizing what's causing those explosions to happen and when I should be jumping to avoid them. But yeah, mouse and keyboard aiming works, as you would expect in a game like this, very, very well. It makes you highly accurate. And you have a nice little dash ability that helps you get out of harm's way, although it does not have invincibility frames, which I keep wanting to think that it does, which gets me killed sometimes, but that's my fault. And you have various kinds of ammo that you can get in various special types of bullets, like remote control bullets and those explosive bullets, and they combine, so you can use a remote controlled electricity bullet or a explosive lightning bullet and things like that. And So, you know, it's one of those games that's based around a kind of central gimmick, that being this special gun, Shine. But the gimmick is very well done. I'm assuming the explosions are when those things reach the ground before I destroy them. Sometimes there's just so much going on that it's hard to pay attention to everything at once. Alright, here we go. Let's do this right this time. And gotcha. And like I said, when things all come together and you feel like you're not screwing up as much, it feels very satisfying and like you're actually doing things right. The dialogue is actually pretty well written as well, in my opinion. It's sometimes laden with references, but it's not like oftentimes heavy-handed references that it feels like it's beating you over the head with. Like, you know, us gamers, right? It's more like just kind of silly stuff that's kind of interesting, which I enjoy. And that was an interesting little section. It was frustrating at times, but once I figured it out, it was fun. And that's kind of how I would describe this whole game. Sometimes it can be a little bit frustrating because you don't quite understand what you need to be doing, or what's killing you, or what exactly you should have done to avoid that particular death. But most of the time, once you figure out what to do, or what you should be doing, because the gameplay is so sublimely executed, it's a lot of fun to actually be doing it. And I guess that is the main point of Rise and Shine, is that, although imperfect, and it does have its problems, it is... Whoops, that's not the cover button. It's very well done. With an interesting story, by the way. It's not your kind of standard, like, kind of video game reference-based story. It's actually a little bit more interesting than that. And like I said, the art style, the animation quality, the particle effects and everything, and all the various background references and everything, it's just, there's so much to take in. The game is absolutely beautiful. And I mean, like, this is obviously like a Mario-based section. You've got a star right there. You've got this, like, Peach statue here. And there's various things like that. Uh-oh. What's gonna happen when I walk over these? Hurry up. Oh, and there's the duck hunt dog. And like that section right there, it gave you plenty of time to see what was going to happen so you didn't die. But there are some sections that feel like they should have been like that, where you had more time to understand, that didn't quite give you that amount of build-up, if you understand what I mean. But basically, the game is laden with things like that, and because of that, I really very much enjoy what it is as a whole. And then you have sections like these, which are various puzzle-based sections that use your gun and your various bullet types and ammo types to help break up what the game is in terms of its combat and things like that, in order to... Whoa. Are these like demon Goombas? In order to give you something else to do as well, which is, you know, neat. Ooh, they kill you instantly. Like I said, why do you have a health gauge when so many things kill you so quickly? But anyway, this is Rise and Shine. It's actually a very neat little game, and it's something that I would definitely, personally, recommend. It can be frustrating at times, and sometimes it takes a while to understand what in a given section you need to actually be doing, but because the gameplay is so good, once you do figure it out, you will likely be having quite a good time. The game is short, yes. Don't use electrical bullets on these guys. But the game is also not expensive. It's only $15, which I feel, for the quality of the content on offer, is a fair price. It's not a, you know, highly expensive game that isn't, you know, substantial, that they're charging way too much for. It is, in my opinion, a fair price for the game length that you're getting. Some people may disagree with that, of course, because, like, value proposition for how much you're getting versus how much money and things like that is very, very personal preference. But, in my opinion... Oh, I see what I need to do. Okay, I need to get that beam to strike in all three of those things. This could be tricky. But anyway, it's still... $15 is really not bad for this. And if you feel the same way, the link is in the description below this video, and you can... Oh, I can stomp them. Because they're Goombas. Of course I can. If you enjoyed this video, please feel free to like and subscribe. If you did not, there was another button down there to show that you really didn't. Thanks again, and I'll see you guys next time.